Graphics don't matter is a lie. A blatant lie we tell ourselves when a game has straight up bad graphics. For the past few years, I've been listening and seeing people make these comments that graphics don't matter. And I am fed up with this to say the least. No, seriously, people need to stop making fool out of themselves. I am sick and tired of hearing this whenever a game falls short to compete on the tracks of graphics. And I'm not just saying it as this is my opinion and you can disagree. No. Well, technically you can disagree, but what I'm about to point out is mostly based on facts and a very little on my personal opinion. This is why Paprika and I invite you to hop in and see why graphics do matter. Number 1. Most of the games in the history were not just good in story or gameplay. They were a complete package of good story, gameplay, and graphics, and in later generations, motion and voice acting. All of these things together make a sound game. Now, take a moment and recall any good game that you've personally liked. I'm sure what most of you are thinking of has a total package of a solid story, gameplay, and graphics. Except a few, but I'll come to that later. And I know since it isn't enough evidence to prove why graphics do matter, I'll jump to my point number 2. Now, I will be mentioning a few critically acclaimed games, one from each generation. I mean, obviously, it isn't possible to mention every single game, so let's get to it. First of all, I'll talk about Super Mario. I don't need to tell you guys how great and famous this game is. The story is pretty straightforward. As for the gameplay, it had a very sweet balance between fast-paced and something that a player would understand. But we're here to discuss graphics, and yes, we know that every game in NES was sprite-based at 8-bit, but that is exactly the point. Even though the game was developed for an 8-bit console, the graphical details this game had were very good, if not the best for this generation. Many of you might not know that, but the idea of Super Mario was extremely difficult to execute at the time, and the reason was graphical limitations. This is what made Nintendo invest on the research and development team, which would later provide Nintendo a software solution to make the development of games based on pixel arts easier. The game had at least 4 color palettes appearing on the screen at the same time, and controlled multiple layers to present the illusion of background, foreground, and characters or objects. So it is pretty safe to say that Super Mario was quite advanced in terms of graphics for its time. I'm sure anyone who has played Sega Genesis is well aware of this game series. Streets of Rage is one of those games that probably squeezed every bit of the 16-bit console. Considering the game was originally targeted for a bit mature audience, the developers tried to give the sprites as much details as possible, and the sprites were not the only thing that was handled with concentration. The animations were as well. Every character has totally different sets of moves, and you can even pick up weapons. All of that tells us that this game was not just any other slap the same stance over every character sprite game. But the developers and designers put in a lot of efforts in achieving that, which again brings us to our point. The graphics did make a difference here. If this game didn't have graphics and animations that good, the gameplay experience wouldn't be as much fun as it was. Other than that, the backgrounds were full of life and fulfilled the requirements of the theme of this game. Metal Gear Solid is 10th best-selling title of the original PlayStation. When a game sells over 6 million copies, you know it's no joke. A perfect execution to a stealth game. Metal Gear Solid is one of those first games that rendered cutscenes with the in-game engine, rather than having pre-rendered cutscenes, which adds a totally different touch to the game. We feel like the game is seamless in flow, and achieving that on a console that had mere 2 MB RAM was really a big deal, as the console discards the previously used areas from the memory while our pre-rendered cutscene is being played, and at the same time the console loads the next area into the memory so that it can be accessed immediately after the cutscene ends. Doing all of that seemed impossible at the time, but Konami made it possible. All the character models had almost the highest achievable polygon count on the original PlayStation. I mean, Snake's model alone had 644 polygons. The number was significantly high for the generation. Plus, the lighting effects and particle system only added cherry at the top. Another title that doesn't need any introduction. Resident Evil 4 was originally supposed to be an exclusive title for Nintendo GameCube, but was also released on PS2 later the same year. Resident Evil 4 for PS2 released in kind of middle of the console's lifespan. The GameCube version looked better in terms of anti-aliasing and all of that, but PS2 version had better lighting. Anyways, that is not the point. The point is, although this is one of those games that had been ported to almost every console, the game was top-notch in terms of graphics for its time. While none of us can disagree that Resident Evil 4 had amazing story and gameplay, but the graphics made the entire experience whole lot better. The character models are of high quality, animation of facial expressions and animation in general too is very impressive. And above all, the environment design really puts players into the protagonist's shoes. I mean, the moment you put your hands on the controller, you start to feel the horrors this environment just wrapped around. To simply put it into words, the graphics made the experience of this game even more immersive. God of War 3 had a revolutionary graphics for the generation. Now, I know that many of you are thinking about The Last of Us, and I agree, but I am focusing more on the games that came out in the middle of a generation's lifespan. And I think it was God of War 3 that really showed us what PS3 was capable of. Think about it for a moment. Would you really enjoy cutting Hermes' feet off? Or decapitating Apollo's head if the graphics were bad? You would not. It's a shame that PS3 was hard to work with for developers, but again, that is not the point here. The point is that I have given you another great title that had not only good gameplay and story, but also the graphics. Another game that I'd point out from the middle of the current generation is Uncharted 4. What a game, right? Uncharted 4 was truly a masterpiece, and I am glad that players were able to experience such an amazing game. And that again brings me here. The game was a complete array. Gameplay was fantastic, combat system was fluid, story was perfectly at Thief's End, and graphics were so freaking good. Now let's jump to point number 3, experience. This is an extremely important thing to notice, the gameplay experience. You must be thinking, gameplay is a different thing, and yes, it is. But I am talking about the whole gaming experience that comes to the player. Take Silent Hill for example. We're disappointed that the game has been cancelled, but when we played the PD, we freaking loved it. Clearly, the concept was remarkable, and the demo was packed with eerie elements, be it environment, sound, or screenplay. And you know what made the experience better? Yes, graphics. You literally could not feel the tension that the developers were trying to build if the graphics were bad. And I'm not just talking about Silent Hill. I mean, Manhunt, Outlast, Evil Within, take any of these games. They all succeeded to make our experience better with their graphics. Another game that just came at the top of my mind, Microsoft Flight Simulator. Come on you guys, you gotta agree on this. Now, I know that this simulator has been coming out for like 40 years now, but Flight Simulator 2020 wouldn't be that much anticipated if it weren't for graphics. Obviously, there are many people who love to get in the seat as a pilot, but many other people are fascinated by it just because of its stunning visuals. So yes, graphics are an adding factor to this game. Point number 4. Less is more. We all know how we started playing games on cartridges. Well, at least millennials do. A component almost of same size as our smartphones now used to hold mere kilobytes of data. And it is not just about cartridges. Take any technology from the past. VCDs, DVDs, they look insufficient these days. And that is a key factor of inspiration in the development of video games. How so? Because it is something that creates a challenge for developers to squeeze in more and more data in a limited storage space. And since graphic resources consume a big chunk of space in whatever kind of storage device we're using, developers have to make wise use of it so that they can fit in everything without compromising on gamers' experience. Number 5. Revolution. And finally, we come to our most important point. If graphics don't matter, then why is every brand fighting console wars and having their new consoles armed with the latest technologies? And why every developer is trying to make better graphics than the previous ones? Because graphics do matter. That is exactly why Nvidia is competing with AMD, and both are trying to make more advanced GPUs with every passing year. And the most bitterly true fact is, if it wasn't for graphics, the PC master race wouldn't be calling console gamers fast. Yeah, I know it might sound stupid to fight over graphics, but the fact is that PC users do run games in much better graphics and in higher FPS. But this video is not an arena for PCMR and console players to beef up. We are talking about facts, and admit it or not, higher FPS does make the gameplay experience better. And luckily, there have been official words that next generation consoles will support up to 120 FPS, and console gamers are happy about it. And quite rightly so, because everyone deserves to experience the best that gaming industry has to offer. Now I will be concluding my video, and before any of you get angry, let me tell you, I am not saying that graphics is the only thing that matters. No, there are many well-known games that didn't have very praiseworthy graphics, but the other elements were so remarkable that they ended up being a great hit. The point is that even if a game is flawless in terms of story and gameplay, good graphics make the entire experience way much better than it already is. So saying graphics don't matter is unwise and untrue. That is all from today's video, guys. Hope you got my point, and if you did, leave a thumbs up, and if you don't agree, you know what to do. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Take care.